Hello there, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to another episode of Steelers Six Pack with Tony. I am your host, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this fine and not so humid Friday evening in Pittsburgh. And as I always say, I hope it's nice and not so humid wherever you are at the moment when you're watching or listening to this podcast. If you're watching live, hello. If you're listening after the fact on any audio platform that you can find podcast, hello again. And before I continue with tonight's show, as always, I would like to ask you to like and subscribe to our Behind the Steel Curtain YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day of the week. We have this show, of course. We have the Touchdown Under Show on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Matty Peverill and Mark Davison. There's the Steelers Q&A every Sunday night, and I'll be on this Sunday night with Jeffrey Benedict at 8 o'clock. So you can catch that every Sunday live at 8. There's Bad Language with Brian Anthony Davis. I believe that's on Sunday. We also have The Hangover on Mondays with Brian and Shannon White and yours truly. There's the Scobro Show on Tuesdays with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich Schofield has been doing the knee-jerk reaction. He was at training camp, I guess, on Thursday, and he did a knee-jerk reaction to that. So you can join those two every Tuesday night. There's the Curtain Call with Jeffrey Benedict and Shannon on Wednesdays. The Preview on Thursdays with Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, and Brian. So we Run the North every Sunday with Kevin Tate. That's a great show. It's a great roundtable show. I watched it the other day. Love it. That's where they kind of discuss all the happenings in the AFC North. And, hey, what's wrong with expanding your horizons? So I like that show. And, of course, you can catch all those shows also live on Facebook, where we have a big presence on Facebook. So you can catch us live on Facebook. And you can catch all of those live shows after the fact on any audio platform. And we also have a whole host of audio-only shows that we produce them, and they get published by Brian, and you can catch them on any audio platform, including Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, The Stat Geek with Dave Schofield, From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict, The War Room with Matty Peverill, The Steelers Fix with the great Jeremy Betts, and the up-and-coming future superstar Andrew Wilbar. Am I missing any? I don't think so. I think I got them all. If I didn't, you can remind me. But anyway, you can, whenever you're on Behind the Steel Curtain, you could scroll down. You can see so many of our shows, the episodes. We have one after another. And, of course, please check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We're bringing news, commentary, film breakdown, any of the happenings going on at training camp, the first week of training camp. As you've seen, if you've been visiting our page, we've brought that to you. So you will not be sorry. And let us check out the live chat. And let's see who we have. Jared Devil's number 1. I'm not surprised there. He's always a favorite to be number 1. Patricia Castandia is number 2 with us. She joins us. State of the Steelers joins us. He wrote a great article about Kenny Pickett today or the other day. George Teston is with us. Brad Jewett, Kathy Ford, and Darkstorm 1. So we have a nice crew on our first Friday after the Steelers started training camp. And let me get you the 6-pack of questions, because I just did my own, because it's easier for me to remember, and I think with training camp starting, I can always come up with 6. So I figured I'd do that. And here's question number 1. On a scale of 1 to 10, how mad are you at Diontae Johnson for his holding? First week of camp, no padded practices yet, and he's holding in much like T.J. Watt did last year, and I believe Cam Heyward did 2 years ago, because of the ongoing contract negotiations that might not even be going on with Johnson. We knew T.J. Watt was engaged in a negotiation with the team last year, and of course Heyward 2 years ago. We have no idea what the status of DJ's contract talks are, if there are any at all at this point. So how mad are you at him on a scale of 1 to 10? How worried are you about Kenny Pickett on a scale of 1 to 10? Word out of camp in week 1 of camp was that he did not look that great. Not a surprise, but how worried are you about that? How worried are you about Minkah Fitzpatrick's injury? He hurt his wrist on vacation. He fell off a bike, and he was placed on the non-football injury list to start camp. Are you worried about Claypool's injury? He was injured on Friday. He left practice with a elbow injury or a shoulder injury, something like that. And have you been to camp yet? That's question number 5. Question number 6, how about that George Pickens, huh? Wow. All right, so those are my 6 questions. So we'll come back and revisit those at the end of the show after I cover my topics. And we also have Sean Manahan with us. Faustino Flores is with us from YouTube. So welcome, you guys. And let's talk about the title of tonight's show, Diontae Johnson's hold-in. So far this camp, he's basically been participating in individual drills, doing some running and catching some passes from, I don't even know who he's catching passes from, but he's not participating in team drills. Although I did see some things posted on Friday where he was running sweeps and things like that. So, I mean, is it really that huge a deal? Like back in my day, a holdout was a holdout, damn it. I remember where I was when I heard the Franco Who comment from Chuck Noll back in 1984, commenting on Franco Harris's holdout. And of course, they released him after that, not long after that, meaning Franco Harris. I remember Mike Merriweather's holdout in 1988. 4 years ago, Le'Veon Bell's holdout. He was on jet skis. Remember that? Remember those social media pictures of him? And it really wasn't a holdout for him because he didn't sign his franchise tag, but still he wasn't on camp. And there was a big uproar. Those were real holdouts, darn it. A hold in. I mean, what is there to get mad at or mad about with a hold in? He's basically still at work. He's participating in one-on-one drills. So is it really a breach of contract at this point? And what makes Johnson any different than T.J. Watt, who did the same thing last year, and Cam Heyward, who did the same thing 2 years ago? What is the difference? And I know what you're going to say. Those guys, meaning Watt and Heyward, are special. And Diontae Johnson's just another receiver. Good receiver, but just another good receiver. Nothing special about him. He's not Antonio Brown. He's not Hines Ward. Heck, he might not even be George Pickens. But so he should be participating fully with this team. He doesn't deserve to hold in while he seeks a new deal like Watt and Heyward did. He doesn't deserve to not risk injury. But try telling him that. Try telling Johnson that he doesn't deserve to not risk injury. After all, the NFL has a union. The NFLPA is a players' union. And when you're in a union, and my boss from Pitt back in the 90s, he taught me this. I really had not thought of this until I asked him. I said, Frank, one day, you think, we should try to start a union, meeting his employees? And he kind of rolled his eyes and said, let me tell you something. They tried to start a union one time years ago. They shot it down when they found out what went into having a union. And basically how he explained it to me is, contrary to what you might believe about certain players having certain privileges over other players or entitlements, when it comes to a union, when it comes to things like contract hold-ins, I'm pretty sure it's a black and white deal. Like you can't allow T.J. Watt to hold in or Cam Heyward to hold in and then tell Johnson, sorry, you got to participate or we're going to fine you. You have to participate fully in every practice or we're going to fine you. How can you do that? How can you do that? You can't base it on performance or awards or Pro Bowls or whatever. what makes Johnson any different than Watt and Heyward? He's a member of the NFLPA, and what does the team say to the union if they decide to fine Johnson for not being a full participant? What do you say? I mean, it's one thing to discipline a union member for off the field issues or for holding out completely and not showing up when you're under contract. But how do you punish Johnson for this? How can you force him to practice fully when, again, you set an example with these? You can say what you want about Watt's pedigree or Watt's status and Heyward's status and everything, but you set a precedent by allowing those guys to quote unquote hold in, whether you allowed it or they just did it. I don't know what the full story was with those two players, but it happened. Now it's happening with Johnson, and we don't know how long it's going to last. I forget how long Heyward's hold in lasted. Watt was pretty much all of training camp last year until they finally signed him to that record-setting deal right at the end of camp. So we don't know how long it's going to be with Johnson. Maybe it's just going to be this week. It's a non-padded practice. These have been non-padded practices this week. That's worth noting. So maybe he participates fully on Monday. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he continues to hold in. I don't know. But when it comes to cases like this, when you're dealing with a union, and get back to my boss from Pitt, what he said to me was like, if you didn't have a union and one of your employees came to you and said, "Hey boss, I'd like to knock off an hour early after dentist appointment. Is that okay?" Sure, go ahead. But if you have a union, you really can't do that, because if you allow one employee to leave early for a dentist appointment, what happens the next day when somebody else comes up to you and says, "Hey boss, my kid's getting out of school early. Can I leave early?" No, you can't. We need you here. Well, why? Why can't I leave early? You let him leave early yesterday for a dentist appointment. Are his teeth more important to my kid? What are you trying to say here? So that's why you can't do that with a union. So believe it or not, when it comes to situations like these, and this is just my opinion, and I could be dead wrong, but I think they have to kind of treat all these situations exactly the same. And again, they set the precedent. The toothpaste is out of the tube, so to speak. The horse is out of the barn, and good luck trying to get that horse to corral that horse in the future and get it back in the barn. Whenever a future player is going through the same thing, the last year of his rookie deal or just the last year of his deal period, and he's trying to negotiate a new contract, he's probably going to do the same thing. He's going to hold in, or maybe hold out, but probably hold in. I guess that's a soft holdout. So good luck in the future with that. There's nothing much you can do about it unless you, from this point on, take a hard line and say, look, any player who decides not to participate fully in training camp because of contract issues will be fined or suspended or whatever. You might have to do that if you're worried about it. But again, it just doesn't seem like that big a deal. Like when I see Johnson out there doing one-on-one drills and he's out there with his teammates, it doesn't seem like it's that huge of a deal at this point. And as far as his teammates are concerned, they've all come out and pretty much supported him. And why wouldn't they? I mean, they're all, again, this is a union, and they're all trying to get paid at some point. So, for somebody like, I don't know, Chase Claypool or whomever to come out and criticize Johnson, well, he could be in the exact same situation a year from now, looking for a new contract, or 2 years from now, whenever his rookie deal is up. I guess it's next year. So, these guys aren't going to criticize their teammates for doing this because they're going to want the same treatment down the road. So you're never going to see anybody come out, and they might passively aggressively do it, but they're not going to come out and be harsh and be direct. That's just not. They would look like hypocrites down the road if they did that, more than likely. So those are my thoughts on Johnson at this point. I'm really not that. I mean, stuff like this never really bothers me. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Holdouts have never really bothered me. Training camp holdouts, anyway. I don't start to get concerned until they start missing the real games, the regular season games. Then it's like, all right, come on. If they're under contract anyway, and obviously there are no indications that Diontae Johnson is going to hold out during the regular season. I kind of, for some reason, I get the feeling he's going to start participating fully once the pads go on next week, or maybe the week after. At some point, he's going to, because I honestly don't believe they're going to reach an agreement on a new deal, because I don't think they value receivers as much as other teams do. The receiver market right now is just out of whack. So I think they personally feel like they can find receivers in the draft, and they can bring them in and develop them and have them perform well, provided everything is going well with the offense, with the quarterback and everything. There's certainly a good track record of that over the last 10, 12 years. It's not perfect. It's not as perfect as people think it is. They remember Antonio Brown and Mike Wallace a short time here. And of course, Hines Ward and Bryant was pretty good until he had his problems. And obviously Juju Smith-Schuster, and obviously Johnson has been a pretty productive receiver here, considering the problems the offense has had his entire career in Pittsburgh. So they definitely have a good track record, not a great one, but a good enough one to where I think they're not going to give Johnson the $20 million a year that he's probably looking for, and a good deal of that, a good bit of that guaranteed. They're probably not going to give him that. They're probably going to ask him or lowball him, and then he's going to play out his rookie deal. And then next year he's either going to leave or they're going to franchise tag him, which I don't anticipate that either, because I'm assuming a franchise tag for a receiver would be close to $20 million guaranteed. And again, I don't think they want to pay him that. As I've discussed in the past, though, at some point, they're going to have to break this rule of not giving receivers second contracts. Yes, they've done it twice in the modern in the salary cap era. Hines Ward and, of course, Antonio Brown, two all-time greats for the organization, and in Brown's case, in the NFL, two all-time greats. But at some point, they're going to have to give a pretty darn good receiver market value. That's just how it's going to be in the future. I mean, that's just how it's trending. Otherwise, they're going to gain a reputation as a franchise that does not want to take care of its wide receivers, even its very good ones. And what's going to happen is guys are going to start asking for trades by their third year, or they're going to start holding out by their third year. They're not going to want to put their bodies at risk here if they don't feel like their employer, meaning the Steelers, is going to take care of them with a market value contract. So I think at some point they're going to have to bite the bullet, so to speak, and pay a pretty darn good receiver market value money. That's just the way things are going right now in the NFL. So those are my thoughts on Johnson. As far as Minkah Fitzpatrick, his wrist, it doesn't appear to be all that serious. He still really hasn't participated in practice yet. And I don't fault him at all for what happened. He was on vacation and he fell off his bike and hurt his wrist. And, those things happen. These guys have lives outside of football, and they're allowed to ride bikes, and they're allowed to, do things that us normal humans do. So I don't have a problem with that. My only thing is, and this is just speculation because I have no way of knowing for sure, but I kind of know, is what would the reaction be had Juju Smith-Schuster, if he was still here, and he went on vacation right before training camp, and he fell off a bike and hurt his wrist and had to be put on the non-football injury list to start training camp. what would the reaction be? And I almost guarantee you the reaction would be hilarious, meaning people would be so outraged. They would be burning their number 19 jerseys or throwing them away or using them as dish rags or whatever, because they would automatically assume that Juju was being irresponsible, that he wasn't focused solely on football, and that's why he got hurt. Remember last year with the milk crate challenge? People were in uproar over that. That it was a TikTok thing that he posted on social media of him trying to do the milk crate challenge. And people that was a debate for 2 or 3 days. So I almost guarantee you, if it was Juju, wow. If it was any receiver, really, Chase Claypool, Diontae Johnson, you name it, because Steelers fans are really they have a love-hate relationship with receivers. Let's be honest, they do. There's Hines Ward, and then there's everybody else. Seriously, think of one receiver that's come through here over the last 20 years that's gotten away unscathed in terms of fan criticism. So yeah, I think they would be very peeved off if it were a receiver that fell off a bike and not Minkah Fitzpatrick. And that's just Steeler fans. That's the mentality. I remember I went to training camp in 2011 with my then girlfriend and my brother, and we're standing around, and there was this older guy talking to this kid. It was like looked to me like a grandfather-grandson dynamic. And he was pointing to the players, and he said, "See those guys in the gold? They're the tough guys. They play defense. See those guys in the white? They're the sissies. They play offense." And, he was starting his grandson off at an early age with that mentality. And what my point is, I think they're more willing to give a safety like Minkah Fitzpatrick the benefit of the doubt for falling off his bike, even though, again, I don't fault him for that at all, but they're willing to just automatically say, "Oh, that's okay. Things happen." But the receivers, those diva receivers, those sissies, they need to focus on football 24/7. So I think that's why you haven't heard any, not a peep about Fitzpatrick and perhaps being irresponsible while on vacation. So I just thought that was a pretty funny thing, because that's the first thing that popped in my mind when I heard that he fell off his bike and hurt his wrist. Oh my gosh, if that were Juju or any other receiver, it would have been ugly. The uproar, they would have been talking about it for days on talk radio, on social media. The debates would be raging. There would be articles written, and the comments attached to the article would be like in the triple digits. It would be crazy. So that's topic number 2. And then topic number 3, of course, has to focus on the quarterbacks. And yes, the practices so far have been without pads, but of course, the debates and the dialogue about the quarterback competition has been red hot, nonstop. Speculation is running rampant. It's exactly what I thought it would be. It's every bit the overhyped, over sensationalized thing that I thought it would be, and I love it. I'm here for it. I want to absorb every second of it. Apparently, Mitch Trubisky, the guy number 1 on the depth chart, looks okay, not great. But he also looks pretty confident that he's going to be the starter based on his interviews and just his demeanor. Mason Rudolph, the backup, number 2 on the chart, he looks great, or at least really, really solid. And he's drawing a lot of praise from the people who are at training camp. Mark Cabali, I think Brooke Pryor praised him, a couple other people. And, of course, Kenny Pickett looks lost, like a deer in headlights. He's not even participating, from what I've read, in the 7-on-7 shots, those famous 7-on-7 drills that they do at the goal line, where it's the offense against the defense, and they run 7 plays, and whoever gets the best of it between the offense and the defense is declared the winner. He hasn't even participated in that yet. nor has he really participated in many of the scrimmage drills, from what I understand. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything at this point. Just 3 days, as of this podcast, 3 full days of practice sessions at Latrobe, again without pads, without hitting. I don't know if that means anything at this point. I am not shocked at all that Kenny Pickett, a rookie quarterback, looks kind of lost and unsure of himself after only a few days. Again, there's a big difference between the ACC and the AFC North. It might as well be a different planet. And, very few quarterbacks step right in and look comfortable from the start. Very few. Peyton Manning, I think, struggled a little bit in his first year, and he's a god. We all know the story about Terry Bradshaw, how he looked like a bust after his first couple years. So, yes, he was the most pro ready coming out of college, coming into the draft. Yes, he was the first quarterback picked, but that didn't guarantee that he was going to come right in and be the man from the get-go. But again, it's only been a few days. They haven't even put pads on yet. So let's see how this progresses. Let's see if it stays the same. The rotation with Trubisky through Mason through Pickett. Let's see if it remains the same, or maybe Pickett starts to make strides as training camp progresses, and Rudolph drops off a bit, or maybe Rudolph stays where he's at, but Pickett just goes by him and earns that number 2 role. But at this point, I fully anticipate Trubisky being the starter in week 1. It looks like that's what their plan is, and it's going to take a lot, in my opinion, from that just based on just the vibe and what people are saying, and how Trubisky is acting, and the fact that he's been with the first team the entire time so far. It looks to me like they're kind of hell-bent on him being the starter, and they want Pickett to kind of take a year on the bench, which I have no problem with, provided Trubisky is a pretty good quarterback this year, or Rudolph, whoever happens to be the starter. I have no problem with sitting Pickett. But if Pickett is the best quarterback by the end of camp, then I think he should be the starter, because you drafted him number 1. And what's the point of putting him on the bench for a year if he's your best quarterback? If the cream rises to the top, so to speak, and he turns out to be the best of the 3, what's the point of him sitting on the bench? You learn so much more through experience. Sorry, folks. Once again, my mic went out. Anyway, what was I? I lost my train of thought. It doesn't matter. But this is one from Faustino. I want to bring up a question. This is, what does it mean if Mason wins the job? Well, that's a loaded question, because if he just happens to be if he just performs, much better than anybody is anticipating at this point, then I think it's a great thing. Now, if he wins the job by default, that's bad news. If he just happens to be the best of a underwhelming trio of quarterbacks, well, that's bad news. But if he just blows past the other two, and he's, I like to compare him to Kurt Warner, because Kurt Warner, even though he was an undrafted free agent out of college, he went on to make the Hall of Fame. So if he turns out to have that kind of a career, then that's a great thing. It all depends on the situation. like lifelong fan says, it means he deserves it. Well, not necessarily. It means that it could mean that he just won it by default. But hopefully, it would mean that he just blew by the other two. Again, though, at the end of the day, yeah, they invested a first-round pick in Pickett. Yes, they signed Trubisky. But at the end of the day, you want to find a great starting quarterback. So I don't think in the long run it would injure the franchise all that much if they wasted a free agent signing on Trubisky and it didn't work out, and they wasted a first round pick on Pickett and it didn't work out, because a great quarterback, a franchise caliber quarterback, those guys are so hard to find. So if you have to break some eggs along the way to making a great omelet, so be it. This one from Ron Schultz and says Mitch and Kenny will get better as camp goes on. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe. Pickett is a rookie. I mean, he's a baby. And this is, in my opinion, a byproduct of the modern era, social media, just everybody weighing in constantly. Every second of the day on everything. You look at social media, you look at Twitter, and you got like 20 different reporters telling you everything that happens on every play at training camp. I can list the names, but the people there. If you follow them on Twitter, and I follow so many of these Steelers reporters on Twitter, and it's like the same thing. Like you scroll down, you see the same thing. Kenny Pickett, 0 for 3 on his last 3 passes, almost had a pick. Mason Rudolph looks great. So it never ends. But so, when we're only 3 days into camp, they haven't put pads on yet. Again, to repeat myself, and yet it feels like camp's been going on for 3 weeks. It's just the nonstop coverage. It just everything's just amplified today. And as far as Mitch Trubisky, he mentioned something the other day about when you're comfortable at what your status is on the as a starter, you have the freedom to maybe go out and test some throws, maybe take some chances, and so maybe that might explain why he's been kind of ho-hum. And plus, he's going up against a really good defense. I mean, he's going up against the number 1 defense. The guys at the top of the chart, right? He's gone up against T.J. Watt, Cam Heyward, you name it. So, and this is the highest paid defense in the NFL, or one of the highest paid, I think. Anyway, it's certainly a much more expensive defense, or more valuable in terms of contracts than the offense. And if you remember back in the 2010s, in the Killer B heyday, when you had a premium offensive line, of course you had Ben in his prime, you had Antonio Brown, Bell. The offense was being handsomely paid, and the defense was kind of young and maybe a little mediocre. And you would hear stories every day in training camp about the offense kind of outshining the defense. And now this week you've heard story after story of the defense kind of overshadowing the offense, kind of dominating the offense. And perhaps that's not a surprise. The offense is still trying to find itself. Obviously, it's still trying to find its quarterback. It's got essentially a new coordinator. He's coming into year number 2, but he's basically being allowed to run his offense for the first time. You have a young offensive line. You have all these young skill position players. They're all trying to learn a new system. So, it's probably not a shock that the defense is outshining the offense at this stage of training camp. So, yeah, Trubisky, I anticipate him getting better as the camp goes on. But again, Mason Rudolph's a wild card here, because as much as you want to discount him, and if I have to read one more time about he was replaced by a duck caller in his rookie year, that was or in 2019, that was literally 4 or 5 games into his career. He was put in a tough situation. He had it was the first year without Le'Veon Bell. Or the second year, I guess. the first year without Antonio Brown, and they're trying to. The line was deteriorating. The offensive line was getting old. So you throw Mason Rudolph in there, who didn't play at all his rookie year, and people were shocked that he was kind of unsure of himself and struggling a bit after 4 or 5 games. Oh, he got replaced by Doug Hodges. How good could he be? That was basically his rookie year. It was basically his rookie year. And people might forget this, but by the end of the year, he looked pretty darn good in that Jets game before he got hurt, and then they had to put Hodges back in there. So people conveniently forget that part. So to me, Mason Rudolph is the wild card in all this because this is his first legit chance to impress people as somebody who is competing for the starting. It's his first chance to start or to compete for the starting job. And you might not think that he has a chance, but there's a big difference between the shadow cast by Ben Roethlisberger and the shadow cast by Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. That shadow is not nearly as intimidating as Big Ben's was. And I'm pretty sure Mason Rudolph is thinking that right now. And if he shows out, it's not going to be, you're not going to have to twist Mike Tomlin's arm to name him the starter over Mitch Trubisky. To name him the starter over Ben Roethlisberger, even a struggling, old, injured Ben Roethlisberger, yeah, that might have been a hard thing for Tomlin to do, but not Mitch Trubisky and not Kenny Pickett. If Mason Rudolph is far and away the best guy, he's going to get the job. But again, that's down the road. So, and let's see, one more thing I want to talk about, and that's George Pickens. He certainly appears to be the star of the first few days of camp, making acrobatic plays, looking like a complete physical mismatch with everybody he goes up against. It's not a shock that a receiver would shine when you're talking about practice without pads, but to me, it's kind of exciting, that he looks that dominant so far. Will it translate once they put pads on? Will it translate to actual games, meaning preseason or the regular season? I don't know. But the general opinion after the draft seemed to be that had he not suffered that torn ACL in 2020, or it was maybe 2021, he would have been the first receiver drafted last year. So, I mean, if he's 100%, he kind of struggled last year. He did fight his way back, and he helped Georgia win a national title, but he wasn't all that impressive. But you're coming off of a major knee injury, and you're coming back less than a year later. Maybe it's not a shock that he wasn't himself when he came back, but maybe he's back now. And if he is, wow, he could be quite the sensation in his rookie year. So that's the thing I'm most excited about after a few days. And I guess, again, it's so early and the sample size is so small, and the sample doesn't even come with shoulder pads. So it's hard to be too excited, but I can't wait to hear more about George Pickens starting on Monday whenever they start hitting and playing real football. All right, let's see what we have as far as the questions. Anybody answer any of my questions that I threw out there? This one's from Faustino about Mason Rudolph, and they say against the Jets, he threw with confidence, and then he got hurt. Yeah, I mean, it was talk about your short sample size. He played for a half, essentially, and then he got hurt, and he didn't really play the rest of the year. And since then, he's just been coming in, spot starts, mop up. So, well, it's hard to really. To me, I think people, I don't know what they expected from Rudolph in his rookie year, but he wasn't going to come in and be Tom Brady right away. So, all right. This is a strong opinion from Jonathan Harvey from YouTube, and he says Mason Rudolph is not the successor to Big Ben. He knows it, fans know it, and the Steelers know it. Mitch and Kenny were brought in because the Steelers don't see Mason as their franchise guy. Well, you're certainly right about why they may have brought in Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. But again, if Mason Rudolph just finds himself this year, they're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth and go, "Oh, sorry, we brought these other guys in. We don't want a good quarterback. See, we're going to trade you for a 3rd-round pick." It's not going to happen. But the odds are against them. All right. This is from Bernie Jones. Okay, let's see what he does. 5 years in the NFL later, we still trying to see what he can do. Crazy. He's had 17 appearances over 5 years. Okay, 17 appearances, and most of those appearances, all of them actually, were for an offense that was awful. Offensive line awful. They went through 2 coordinators, so it's only 17. He's had 1 season of NFL experience over 5 years. It's not like he's played in 50 games. Again, this is what's so weird about the quarterback, and this is what people kind of don't seem to get about that position. Is it's the one position where you can't get in-game reps as a backup. You're either a backup standing there watching the game, or you're starting because the other guy got hurt. You don't get to go in and gain experience through playing. Yeah, you can play in the preseason. Obviously, there's practice, but there's nothing like a real game. And that's what's so weird about quarterbacks, because people they expect these guys to come in and either have it or they don't, or not right away. And really, who knows throughout history how many quarterbacks were lost because they just didn't get a chance to develop because people gave up on them too soon. We'll never know the answer to that question, but there certainly have been some examples of guys who have resurrected their careers because they were given a chance. Clint Nicely says DJ needs to get it together. He needs the Steelers more than they need him. No, you don't know that. I mean, what if his talents have been hidden over the last few years because he's been playing in a compromised offense, and he turns out to be the next, I don't know, name any great receiver. What if he turns out to be that guy? You don't know. But Faustino says, wasn't Mason Rudolph the quarterback against the line? Of course he was. Everybody knows that. That 16-16 tie. Ron Schultz says DJ isn't TJ. Well, that's true, but DJ's part of the same union that TJ belongs to. And try explaining to that union that you're going to punish this guy for holding in when you didn't punish the other guy. Because the union treats all their players the same, right? They view them all the same. They're not going to defend one guy over the other. So, once you can't say it's a matter of deserving when it comes to this kind of stuff. You can't say it's a matter of who's more important, because you can't tell Diontae Johnson that he's not as important as TJ Watt. So we want you to go out there and risk your health and potentially ruin your chance to get a big contract. All right. Let's see what else we have here. All right. It's all about the quarterback and Diontae Johnson, which I'm not surprised. It's a big thing. Alex Flores says Johnson will get traded. I wonder what you think they would get for him, because he is going into the final year of his rookie deal. So it's not like they have any control over him after this year. I think I missed one on Bradshaw. I wanted to find. I like the Bradshaw. Here we go. This one is from lifelong fan. Terry Bradshaw didn't have it either until they played him more. Yeah, it took him a while to – actually, I think he started early on, and then he was eventually replaced by Joe Gilliam. But, yeah, he struggled mightily over his first 4 or 5 years. I mean, it was a different time, and the defenses certainly had more free reign, and you didn't have the West Coast offense. You didn't have dink and dunk or anything like that, so it was harder for a young quarterback, and you didn't have the Mel Blount rule yet. Offensive linemen weren't allowed to extend their arms, so it was tougher for offenses back then than it is today. But yeah, Bradshaw struggled mightily for the longest time, and the only reason why he was probably allowed to struggle for as long as he did was he was the number 1 overall pick in 1970. Had he been a 3rd round pick, he probably would have been gone by 1974. But instead, he was allowed to stick around and be their best quarterback and win the Super Bowl that year, and 3 more after that. Clint nicely pumps me up a bit by saying, "I always enjoy your insights and Steelers coverage." Well, thank you, Clint. I enjoy your feedback, and of course, I enjoy the fact that you are watching and listening. This is one from Michael Demongon from YouTube. DJ needs to show he can catch balls and not have the drops. He scares me with his untimely drops. He did it in the playoff game against Kansas City. Just kills me. Yeah, I mean, you can. There are ways to, you can sort of shrug that off and say that, he's had to catch so many short passes over the last couple of years in traffic, and that might affect a receiver's concentration. But he's never going to shake that label until he does. And last year he was on his way to doing that. He really improved. Overall, he did improve his drop rate from the year before, but he had a lot at the end of the year, and as Michael mentioned, in the playoffs. So that brought that label back in full force. And of course, the contract stuff and his perceived demands, that just amplifies that criticism even more. And this one is from James Bradshaw. Why are people not talking about our tight end? I think we have 2 good ones. Well, I've heard some things about Zach Gentry. I think it's so far in camp. And Freiermuth, by the way, I think he was out on Friday with an injury. But I think everybody's pretty convinced that Freiermuth is going to be a stud. So, it's been 3 days. It's been 3 days. There's only so much you can talk about in 3 days, and most of the coverage is going to be on the quarterback stuff and Diontae Johnson. That's just how it is. State of the Steelers says Johnson told out he is hurting himself by holding in. He's allowing the other receivers the opportunity to take his spot, and the QBs are building cohesiveness with current receivers participating. Well, I mean, he has 3 years in the league. Maybe not with Mitch Trubisky as his quarterback, but he has 3 years in the league, so he has a resume. And again, it's only been a few days. We'll see how long this lasts. He didn't participate in OTAs early on, and then he came in at the end. So maybe this is just a week-long thing. Maybe it'll be a couple weeks. But I don't think he's hurting himself as much as people say. I think, he's to me, what he's done through 3 years has been pretty impressive considering how compromised the offense has been. So I think why he's not being given more credit for being productive, when very few people on that offense have been, I don't know. But, the opinions on that hold in are going to vary. But again, you can't expect Johnson to act differently than T.J. Watt did or Cam Heyward. They're not looking at it based on merit. They're looking at it based on the fact that their employer lets one person do something, so why can't they let them do something, do the same thing? All right. Let's see what else we have here. I think that might be it for tonight. I'm getting up against the 10 o'clock hour. Probably time to call it a night. Don't forget to check out Behind the Store Curtain for all of your Steelers needs, the podcast side, both live and audio, and of course the editorial side. The news will keep coming at you fast and furious. And check out our podcast this weekend and check back on Monday, and I'll be with you again. Or actually on Sunday. I'll see you on Sunday night with Jeffrey Benedict on the Q&A. And then, of course, I'll be back on Monday on The Hangover. So until then, you guys have a great weekend. And as always, go Steelers. You guys take care.